Hey everyone, welcome to KSSP Podcast. I'm Spencer.
And I'm Katie. Today we are going to be talking about gut microbiomes. And the gut microbiomes are basically just a bunch of microorganisms living in your body that help you with things like your digestive system and your mental health. They help with all sorts of functions in your body. So we're going to read something from Harvard School of Public Health. So there's trillions of microorganisms, also called microbiota or microbes, of thousands of different species inside of our bodies. These include not only bacteria, bugs, so to speak, coexist peacefully, with the largest numbers found in the small and large intestines, but also throughout the body. The microbiome is even labeled a supporting organ because it plays so many key roles in promoting the smooth daily operations of the human body. Each person has an entirely unique network of microbiota that is originally determined by one's DNA. A person is first exposed to microorganisms as an infant during delivery in the birth canal and through the mother's breast milk. Exactly which microorganisms the infant is exposed to depends solely on the species found in the mother. Later on, environmental exposures and diet can change one's microbiome to be either beneficial to health or place one at greater risk for disease. So it consists of microbes that are both helpful and potentially harmful. Most are symbiotic, where both the human body and microbiota benefit. And in some smaller numbers are pathogenic, and those ones promote disease. In a healthy body, pathogenic and symbiotic microbiota coexist without problems. But if there's a disturbance in the balance brought on by infectious illness, certain diets, or prolonged use of antibiotics or other bacteria, destroying medications, dysbiosis occurs, stopping these normal interactions. As a result, the body may become more susceptible to disease. And we're going to watch a video here. It's called What is
Our daily lives. Emotions, weight, brain functioning, even food choices. These microbes, like bacteria and fungi, live in your digestive tract, mostly in your large hosts, which runs your brain and muscles. It also enables your body's messenger.
Interesting. So it's not just your digestive system, it's like everything your body does to function.
Mice then showed fewer anxiety symptoms. Fruit flies with particular bacterial species in their microbiomes ate more protein. When researchers changed the flies' microbiomes, the flies ate more sugar.
Interesting.
In one study, researchers found that many elite athletes have a group of bacteria that help break down lactate and could help performance and recovery.
Okay, pause. Okay. So to me that makes it sound more like the microbiomes kind of determine, like, what kind of foods you're going to crave, what kind of foods you're going to eat, rather than the other way around. Or it could just be cyclical, where like the more you feed into it, the higher the cravings get. But like some people might start off with microbiomes that predispose them to a higher likelihood of a better or worse diet.
I think we'll mention that a little bit later, or if we don't, I definitely remember reading something about that, and it's like I think it has to do with I think that does play a part, but I don't know if it's more so that I guess it's hard to tell which comes first. Like if you eat in an unhealthy diet leads to those bacteria that like the unhealthy food becoming more prominent in your gut microbiome, or if they were there first leading you to want to eat that food, I think is what they.
Right. Well, because when they were talking about the experiment with the mosquitoes, right? And they said when they changed their microbiomes, their diet changed after. So there's definitely a causal effect, but it could also be a cyclical thing where, while it may predispose, like the more that you eat maybe an unhealthy diet, like the more likely you're going to keep eating that unhealthy diet due to your microbiome.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's also psychological factors to diet too, especially with the way that food is processed today and the way, food is made and sold, at least in America. But like, there's, microbiome does seem to play a factor in that as well.
Yeah.
And like, the microbiome could even influence the psychology of it. It could even influence like your cognition when it comes to diet, especially if it's affecting like your neurotransmitters and you're gaining dopamine from eating maybe high amounts of sugar, for example. And like I would think the microbiome would affect the amount of dopamine really, or how the dopamine is. It would probably have some kind of effect on that, I would assume, if it's involved in those systems.
When these bacteria were transplanted into mice, the mice's treadmill performance increased. And this is all great news. Because you can't change your genes, but you can change your microbiome for the better. And one of the quickest ways to do that is through food. There are immeasurable other factors that influence your gut microbiome: where you live, sleep, exercise, stress. But what your body makes and what kind of microbes your gut has depend a lot on the food you eat. You can change your microbiome and potentially your daily experiences and long-term health through food. Recent technology makes it possible to test your gut microbiome at home to get a peek at what's living inside you. But is gut microbiome testing worth it? In the next episode, we'll take a look.
Okay.
For the Washington.
All right, and that's it for that video. So, all right, now we can go back to that Harvard article we were looking at. We can talk about how the microbiota benefit the body. So they stimulate the immune system, breaking down potentially toxic food compounds and synthesizing certain vitamins and amino acids, including the B vitamins and vitamin K. For example, the key enzymes needed to form vitamin B12 are only found in bacteria, not in plants and animals. Sugars like table sugar and lactose, which is milk sugar, are quickly absorbed in the upper part of the small intestine, but more complex carbs, like starches and fibers, are not as easily digested and may travel lower to the large intestine. There, the microbiota help to break down these compounds with their digestive enzymes. The fermentation of indigestible fibers causes the production of short-chain fatty acids that can be used by the body as a nutrient source, but also play an important role in muscle function and possibly the prevention of chronic diseases, including certain cancers and bowel disorders. Clinical studies have shown that SCFA may be useful in the treatment of ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, and antibiotic-associated diarrhea. The microbiota of a healthy person will also provide protection from pathogenic organisms that enter the body, such as through drinking or eating contaminated water or food. Large families of bacteria found in the human gut include Prevotella, Ruminococcus, bacteroides, and firmicutes. In the colon, a low oxygen environment, you will find anaerobic bacteria, Peptostreptococcus. Just going to try to pronounce these. Bifidobacterium, Lactobacillus, and Clostridium. These microbes are believed to prevent the overgrowth of harmful bacteria by competing for nutrients and attachment sites to the mucous membranes of the gut, a major site of immune activity and production of antimicrobial proteins. So, just some current research topics include how the microbiome and their metabolic substances produced by metabolism influence human health and disease, what factors influence the framework and balance in one's microbiome, and the development of probiotics as a functional food in addressing regulatory issues. Specific areas of interest include factors that affect the microbiome of pregnant women, infants, and the pediatric population, manipulating microbes to resist disease and respond better to treatments, differences in the microbiome between healthy individuals and those with chronic disease such as diabetes, gastrointestinal disease, obesity, cancers, and cardiovascular disease, developing diagnostic biomarkers from the microbiome to identify diseases before they develop, and alteration of the microbiome through transplantation of microbes between individuals. And up next, we've got a video. This is from an accredited hospital, UCLA Health. 5 tips to keep your gut microbiome healthy. Oh, sorry, were you ready?
Microbiome is basically all the microorganisms that live on and in our body. So fungus, bacteria, viruses, other organisms that live with us and go through life with us. And the microbiome recently has become really exciting because we've realized that it's not just that these organisms are passive passengers on our body, and they're not just things that cause disease. They're things that actually help us, interact with us, and may help us develop who we are and really how our health is overall. It turns out that our microbiome is in flux all the time, and we can help mold it to give us the best health that we can have. 5 tips to keep the microbiome healthy, particularly your gut microbiota. So first, healthy diet. And this is lots of fruits and vegetables, low animal fats, low animal products. 2, exercise. Keeping your body healthy will help keep your gut healthy and their microbiome healthy. 3, reducing your stress if you can. We know that stress is going to negatively impact your microbiome, and you can have reductions of some of the good bacteria that you want. 4, if you can stay away from antibiotics, do so. Only take antibiotics when you have an infection that really needs to be treated with antibiotics, because they can reduce the diversity of your microbiome, and that can be a problem in health. And finally, people ask about probiotics, prebiotics. These are things that may be helpful in particular diseases or disorders, but if you're perfectly healthy and you're doing all those other 4 things, you probably don't need to add it on just because. Use them only if you need to.
All right, well, that's it for that video. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and what they said makes sense. Obviously, we know, or I guess to me, it seems obvious that what we eat is gonna affect our gut microbiome, and then obviously you should adjust your diet first before taking probiotics or prebiotics if you can. And then exercise. I actually looked into, so if you're okay, I can go over my couple of points here. So first, we'll continue just a little bit with gut health. I found some just information. So, nutrient availability is affected by our gut microbiota, which in turn affects our gut brain axis, which can affect a host of things like our sleep wake cycle, our gut brain, our sleep wake cycle, feeding, mood, blood pressure, hormone release. So, as we can see, that gut microbiome can affect a bunch of the functions of our body. So it's good to should want to keep it healthy if we can. I think as it was mentioned either in the last video or the video before, it affects inflammation, immunity, mood, and our overall health. And I also just found it interesting that diversity seems to play an important role, that our gut microbiome needs diversity. Obviously, I know that doesn't mean anything that we can extrapolate to us humans, but I do think that's something that we can learn from them, right? You would think diversity. If diversity is good for our gut microbiome, wouldn't we think it would be good for humans too? Maybe.
I mean, I think that we could extrapolate that to humans in a sense, because like your microbiome is a community that strives off of diversity, and all of the diverse roles of each individual organism is going to play a role in how that body functions and how well that body functions. And if there's no diversity, then there's like not people aren't or not people sorry organisms aren't filling different roles in the body, like they're fulfilling the same role, and then that's going to lead to dysfunction in the body. And I think you could extrapolate that to human communities, at least in a certain sense. Like, if like just if everyone's kind of functioning the same way and thinking the same way and doing the same thing, like, and they just are the same, like that's going to lead to less functionality in the society, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with that because it would almost be like if everybody in town wanted to be a farmer in that community. Well, what about nurses? What about firefighters? What about contractors,
What
architects? Like we
about the
need,
McDonald's worker, the Starbucks worker who gets your coffee every morning,
yeah.
like
But yeah, either way, we need diversity, and diversity is just important with all aspects, I would say,
right.
to a
Because if
functioning
we didn't have
society.
diversity, like this our society would just crumble.
Oh yeah, definitely. So then the next point I was just going to go over here too was, so I would kind of, when I was doing a little bit of my researching, I guess you could say, I was wondering like how abnormal microbiota end up in our system, because obviously we know that the abnormal microbiota can affect us negatively. So what I found was that many factors can contribute to gut instability, including sleep. So with sleep, it was unclear. A study There was a study that found positive correlation with sleep efficiency and total sleep time and negative correlation with sleep fragmentation, but they correlated this as a healthy gut microbiome, meaning you would get good sleep. So with that one, they were basically saying that the gut microbiome leads to better sleep, rather than claiming that bad sleep leads to an unhealthy gut microbiome. But I almost feel like it could go both ways. I would think, like, if you're not going to get good sleep, that could it potentially, in my head, lead to an unhealthy gut microbiome, just as an unhealthy gut microbiome is going to lead to unhealthy sleep, if
And
that makes
that would
sense.
make sense because, like, if you don't get proper sleep, then you're not giving your body the time to reset. And that also includes you're not allowing your microbiomes to kind of reset themselves either. You're kind of making them work overtime.
Yes, exactly. Another thing that can affect like your microbiota, obviously, like they mentioned, is exercise. And with that, I found that one study found that exercise is able to enrich gut microflora diversity, and it appears to be able to maintain balance or rebalance the gut microflora. So basically, exercise is just really good at balancing and enriching our gut microbiome. And then obviously
Is
we'll,
there,
hmm?
was there any explanation for like why, or is
No,
that
I
just
didn't. That one I did not find any like in depth as to the physiology of why it works,
okay?
but yeah, that one I'm not sure on. Because I guess when you think about it, like obviously exercising is going to increase our heart rate, which is going to get blood pumping to like, and maybe that just helps your gut somehow, like just having more blood, like oxygen rich blood to your gut. I mean, that probably plays a part. That just plays, exercise is just good for all systems with that, but I don't know what else it could be with exercise, really.
Because did you see anything about if like do the organisms? I assume they reproduce in the body,
That I'm not sure. I would think
and
so. I
that
would
would
assume
lead to
so
more
too.
diversity.
Like if they're mixed, but I am
Like even if
not.
they're not crossbreeding or whatever, like it would still lead to more diversity because you would have more of each, if that makes sense.
Yes, I guess I'm not knowledgeable on the reproduction of bacteria personally, because I don't remember if they
I think they produce
reproduce
sexually.
themselves or if they have to reproduce with another bacteria. I don't remember if they're the type that can just like, like there's
Oh,
certain things that can just recreate themselves, I guess is how I would.
so this says so bacteria cannot reproduce sexually, but they can exchange genetic information with each other. Using a pilus,
Oh,
two bacteria make contact with each other and exchange genetic material. This is called conjugation. So they can
interesting.
exchange genetic material with each other, just not sexually, I guess.
What is the average lifespan of a gut microbacteria? I'm just really curious now too, because I wonder and not like death, but just their life. Like obviously they can die if we have unhealthy
So,
guts, but
how long does bacteria in the gut live? From sciencefocus.com, it says bacteria divide somewhere between once every 12 minutes and once every 24 hours. So, the average lifespan of a bacterium is around 12 hours or so.
oh, interesting. I didn't realize it was that
Short.
like quick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So, oh yeah, actually there was a thing, I don't know if I'm gonna bring it up late, but that's okay because I can mention it now. What I saw somewhere, it was I think an article that showed that we can change our gut microbiome within like 24 hours. So I guess that makes sense because they split so frequently that if you change your diet, that can change your like lead to a healthier gut microbiome within 24 hours. Now, I don't remember if it said it sustains it. I mean, obviously, I think that would come down to you having to follow that diet continuously instead of like then switching back to an unhealthy diet because then it's going to switch up again. But it's just awesome or crazy, interesting how in that short of time you can have like drastic changes sort of, you know.
Yeah.
So then the next thing that I saw that can affect abnormal microbiota is diet, and I think that one kind of just we'll talk a little bit more in another episode a tiny bit more about diet, but obviously what we eat is going to affect our gut microbiome.
Yes.
And then the last one I found was infection, and I think you had an article maybe about
Yes.
COVID
I
and
sure did.
infection. So I felt we could go over that and kind of see what that, if that kind of brings up how infection affects our gut microbiome or allows the abnormal microbiota to infect us in our gut microbiome.
Yes. So this article is from Gut Microbiota for Health by ESNM. So this article is called The Gut Microbiome in the Time of COVID-19, What Major Scientific Breakthroughs Have Been Made in Gut Microbiome Since Microbiome Science in 2020. How might the gut microbiome fare in the fight against COVID-19? The respiratory symptoms of COVID-19, the ability of the virus to bind its receptors expressed along the gastrointestinal tract, and an altered gut microbiota composition in some patients means the gastrointestinal tract can be considered a potential target in the fight against COVID-19. Although a study previously looked at the role of prebiotics and probiotics in reducing the incidence and duration of viral respiratory infections and improving the efficacy of the seasonal influenza vaccine, it is too early to recommend them as a means of tackling coronavirus. Fecal microbiota transplants also constitute another approach for targeting the gut microbiome, but can potentially transmit COVID-19 and can transfer extended spectrum beta lactamase producing gut bacteria in immunocompromised elderly patients. So we'll talk about diet, gut microbiome, and immune homeostasis and gastrointestinal health and beyond. So diet is considered one of the biggest determinants of gut microbiome composition and therefore of an immune system in good shape with gut microbiome heterogeneity, becoming a relevant player in individual responses to diet, lifestyle, and medication. COVID-19 is an external insult that can activate an immune response, which is accompanied by higher demand for nutrients that support the functioning of the immune system. While we await an effective vaccine against COVID-19, consuming sufficient amount, well, this is kind of old, I guess, but consuming sufficient amounts of essential nutrients in the context of a plant-based diet to support the immune system seems to be an approach worth considering to help the host better defend itself against the virus infected. Yeah, so okay, here's the thing about diet that can be kind of annoying, but I'm gonna bring this up anyways. Eating healthy, like, can be really expensive. Like, it can be cheap. It depends on your taste. It depends on what you like. Like, forcing people to eat foods they don't like just kind of seems like stupid to me, I guess. Like, it's not gonna improve quality of life if you're always eating food that you don't even like. But like there's always healthy options that honestly like taste the same as the unhealthy options. And but they're expensive. Like, yeah, like produce is expensive. produce is definitely expensive. That's why I don't eat a lot of it. Like if you just want to eat beans and rice for every single meal, then go for it. But I mean, I don't even think that's necessarily a healthy diet either. But a lot of people will say that that's their healthy, cheap diet that they have. I think having variety in food would improve the microbiome, I would think. Like, it just, to me, and I don't have any evidence on this. I mean, I can always look it up, I guess, but like, it just seems like having a variety in your diet improves your health too.
I think I mean, in a sense it would, because obviously you don't want only sugar or only fiber or only, like, we do need a variety, yes, but it is important to get like that fiber,
Yeah.
which a lot of fast food doesn't have fiber.
Yeah.
Like, I think fiber is one thing that's a lot of people like, and I think that's why I assume beans are pretty high in fiber, and I guess rice. So that's probably why it seems healthy
Yeah.
to eat like beans and rice all the time. But
But you're not
that still
getting
isn't diversity either.
right,
Like, you still need that
and you're not
diversity.
getting like certain vitamins that you need too from foods.
Yes, unless you're taking like a multi, but then I mean you're taking that multivitamin as
Yeah.
a like replacement, I guess, for the food, which then that's fine. If I mean you and your doctor have talked about that, that's
Yeah.
conversation for you and your doctor or
Right.
nutrition or whatever you can.
As long as you're getting it from a good source too,
Yes, yes.
as with all supplements.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah, in 2020, scientists have improved their understanding of the therapeutic effects of diet mediated by the gut microbiome in both gastrointestinal conditions and systemic diseases. Different sources of evidence in humans have shown that peppermint oil, specific probiotics, psyllium supplementation, and the low FODMAP diet can aid in improving IBS symptoms. On the other hand, the inflammatory potential of diet has been linked to a risk of Crohn's disease, a phenotype about which the gut microbiome might have a lot to say. Understanding how diet impacts the gastrointestinal ecosystem has also shed a light on the importance of taking care of diet for tackling hypertension, the mechanisms underlying the keto's diet health benefits, and identifying microbial signatures in the liver, adipose tissue, and blood linked to type 2 diabetes. Rather than focusing only on changes in the gut microbiota composition, scientists have also become interested in how diet-derived or microbiome-mediated metabolites play a crucial role in celiac disease, helping patients identify at risk of inflammatory bowel disease that will develop into ulcerative colitis and aid in the development of new anti-diabetic drugs. Altogether, the findings highlight that the current guidelines for managing systemic conditions that apparently have no link with the gut should pay attention to diet as a central element of treatment, with the gut microbiome an important part of the puzzle. Beyond diet, the herbicide glyphosate has drawn scientists' attention due to its impact on human health linked to changes in the gut microbiome. Okay, and then the last part of this I'm going to read is the gastrointestinal health and the gut microbiome, focusing on the small intestine. Many oral assisted bacteria have been identified in the stomach and small intestine, but their association with the intestinal mucosa may not merely be the result of luminal contamination. Although the small intestine is a harsh environment for microorganisms to thrive and methodological challenges exist when studying the small intestinal microbiota, it has become a relevant area in the context of functional gastrointestinal disorders and enteropathies such as celiac disease. It is also interesting to note that bacteria in the small intestine could also be involved in boosting inflammation that makes it harder for children to get the calories and nutrients they need. So your microbiome can actually affect like how you're digesting your food and what you're getting out of your food. Interesting. So that was the COVID article I had.
Okay, that was good. I mean, interesting as it always is. Did it state how infection as a, because I guess I don't know if I did it state like how infection as a process can lead to abnormal microbiota? I don't remember if I heard that specifically, but like abnormal microbiome. how infection leads to an abnormal gut microbiome. I don't know if it mentioned directly, or I mean, I guess in my head it would just be that bacteria, the bad bacteria, if you will, just must be I don't want to say stronger than our good bacteria, but I mean obviously, or maybe it just avoids detection from our immune system and then reproduces if because I'm assuming bad bacteria would also reproduce almost as quickly as our the microbiota in our stomach. So, and if you don't like detect, if your body doesn't detect that there's an infection, then it just keeps reproducing, and then it kind of takes over, and then it's also just kind of
Which is why usually your body will attack like foreign bodies like that if you're
yeah, yeah.
healthy.
But then it's interesting though that there are some bad bacteria that aren't inherently evil, if you will, that they don't like the body doesn't attack them, but they still lead to bad, like I guess worse outcomes in our overall health compared to if we had a different strain of bacteria. So that is interesting, I guess. And to me, just that there is bad, like I guess if you will, bad bacteria, but it isn't bad enough to where your body will attack it, you know?
And it's not all bacteria either, because they mentioned there's fungi and viruses. Like I wonder if that's with type 1 diabetes, at least when like the virus attacks your body, like if it is also impacting the microbiome.
I would think so. Maybe. I guess I
I would think
don't
it
know for
would.
sure, but
Because I mean, even like people who study this don't even completely know how it works from what I
yeah,
understand.
I think we're still learning a lot too.
So like it's all theoretical, but all hypothetical, sorry. But yeah, I mean, I would think that it would attack the microbiome, or like it would impact the microbiome, because I mean they even mentioned that like diabetics have different microbiomes than a healthy person. Right, so we're going to start with what is the vagus nerve? The vagus nerve is a cranial nerve with a long list of functions, and it's one way the gut and the brain
And
communicate.
then we're gonna briefly just move on to some neurotransmitters. So first we'll start with what is dopamine. Dopamine is important for various functions, including attention, sleep, learning, mood, etc.
Okay, so what is serotonin? Well, serotonin is a neurotransmitter. It plays a role in regulating sleep, pain, appetite, and mood.
And you may be wondering, well, who cares? Why does any of this matter? Well, these neurotransmitters play an important role in the body, as we just stated, and it turns out that 90% of the body's serotonin and 50% of the body's dopamine can be found in the gut.
So, what does this mean? Well, this could mean there's evidence that the microbiota of the gut heavily influence the gut brain relationship, which may affect mood, function, and regulation. There are various gut microbiomes that can affect the dopamine bioavailability. Some microbiomes have been shown to affect receptors, transporters, and targets along the dopamine pathway, either positively or negatively. The vagus nerve is important for dopamine activation and influence. And then one interesting thing we found looking up info for the topic was that it was mentioned how it's unclear whether the vagus nerve is directly affected by the microbiomes or their metabolites. And I guess I would think that it's the metabolites that are affecting the vagus nerve, leading to the neurological response, good or bad. But the microbiomes are still important because they've shown that each microbe appears to be important for particular processes. So without that microbe, you may not have the metabolite that leads to the neurologic response. So both are important. I just feel that the metabolite from the microbes that causes the vagus nerve to respond. Oh, I guess that sentence makes
Sorry,
sense.
I forgot that I put in my own personal. I'm sorry, you didn't have to read that part. I forgot that I put my own personal
Oh,
opinion
that's
in
fine.
there. I didn't mean to force you to read my opinion, but what do you think about it?
Oh, that's
What do
fine.
you think about
I mean,
that? I guess. Do you think that it's the so what was it? So basically they didn't like what I found was that they'd the researchers to this date from that article that I found it in, didn't know if it was the microbes interacting with the vagus nerve or if it was the metabolites from the microbes. So after the microbe digests the food and produces that metabolite, if that metabolite is what it interacts with the vagus nerve. And to me, I thought it was the metabolites, not the bacteria or virus or whatever itself. So I think it's the
Yeah.
byproducts of the bacteria that interacts with our nervous system, not the actual bacteria or virus or whatever, or the microbiome.
Yes. Then now is the microbiome or the microbes, are they able to send messages to the metabolites?
I don't think so. I think it's just
The
like a
metabolites?
byproduct from what I um, understood, but that I don't know for sure. Like to me, I think of it as being like
So what are the metabolites?
their poop, if you
Metabolites.
will, like their byproducts. So they digest. So we eat food, and then they
Oh,
digest
okay.
that food, and then they poop out
Oh,
like
it's the
dopamine or
byproduct of what
whatever.
we digested.
Yeah, with the micro. So basically,
Okay.
when we eat, from what I understood, we're just feeding our microbiome, and then they're digesting that food and producing things that we need to function. So really, we're not eating the food
Right.
for us; we're eating it for them. But we like the
Yeah.
byproducts. Like obviously, with
But
sugar, we get
we
dopamine.
benefit from it still.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I was just saying, and we benefit from it still. But I see what you're saying, though,
Yeah.
because we benefit from the microbiome getting that food,
Yes, because
but the
that's
food
gonna
doesn't directly go to that
gonna
necessarily.
yeah. But the food will determine which byproducts they produce. So the food still matters in a sense, but we're not, from my understanding, eating the food. Like we are, but we're feeding. Like I don't know. That's just what
We're
and I
feeding
could be
our gut.
completely wrong, but that's what I gathered when I was looking into it. But
Yeah.
with that, I just felt that it was more the
Okay.
metabolites than the actual bacteria itself that interacts with our nervous system. Unless the bacteria has some synapses on it that can interact. But that to me just, but I don't know for sure. And they don't know either. So that was just something that I found interesting, I guess, while looking it up
Okay.
and elaborated on a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So we know how important dopamine and serotonin are in regards to the brain, so it's important for us to attempt to understand how these microbes and the different neurotransmitters may be connected and how those connections may affect us. It's been shown that some mood disorders, such as depression and autism, have well established links with a dysfunctional GI system. It also turns out that GI disorders often have a mental illness as a comorbidity.
And how do they know this? Well, to show this connection, researchers have done studies on rats where they introduced a unique bacterium into their GI system, which then elicited an anxiety like response. In that study, the researchers found that there were neuronal regions in the brain being activated that were dependent on the gut brain pathway. There have been other studies done on rats that have shown that their gut microbiome early in life, postnatal, can have long lasting effects in how they respond to stress. Neuronal processing of sensory information regarding the endocrine stress axis. So basically, uh, per their research, it seemed to show that our gut microbiome early in life can affect us long term, in theory.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So then what about the rest of our body? Uh, so our microbiota plays an important role in regulating immune homeostasis. It can also elicit or prevent inflammation. For example, with IBS, there is abnormal microbiota that lead to an immune response resulting in symptoms which are abdominal pain and cramping, bloating, swelling of the stomach, and change in bowel habits. Stress heavily affects the gut microbiome permeability, which has been associated with gut disorders such as leaky gut. Leaky gut allows bacteria to seep into circulation, producing an inflammatory response. Gut microbiome dysfunction can also lead to inflammation, which has been implicated in a number of psychological disorders. Unclear at the time of the article we found if it's the faulty brain signaling that leads to the gut microbiome dysregulation, or if the gut microbiome dysregulation can lead to the brain disorders. And I guess
So that's my opinion
that,
again. But you can,
yeah,
so I guess I feel that it would be the gut microbiome, especially with the studies that they have done that have shown that if we alter the gut microbiome, we see a neurologic response. To me, that would lead me to believe that the gut microbiome can lead to brain disorders, but I guess it could also be true that brain disorders could lead to gut dysregulation. Maybe either or can lead to the other. And I guess I was curious on your thoughts too, obviously.
see, to me, it seems like something that would be cyclical.
What does that
So,
mean? What do you mean
like,
by that?
so by cyclical, I mean that they both can cause each other.
Oh, okay.
So, like, the gut microbiome can induce a brain, a psychological disorder if it's not healthy. And then that in turn, that psychological disorder would in turn also lead to the worsening of the health of the gut microbiome.
Okay.
So it would just be cyclical, like going back and forth, basically.
Do you think
Um,
one
like
leads to the
kind
other
of like
based on
how
individuals?
I think one could lead to the other, yeah, based on the individual. So, because, like, for example, depression isn't always a chemical response initially. Sometimes depression is completely based off of your environment. And so that would affect your brain. And in that instance, the psychological disorder would be what was affecting the gut microbiome. But with other people, I think that they start off with the unhealthy gut microbiome and that leads to the depression, you
Yeah,
know?
that makes sense.
Like, I
So
think
it
it's a
kind of is
person
going to
which
be
leads to
like
what
an
first.
yeah, like individual. So basically, obviously, with any new discovery that we always make, we can't ever what am I trying? We can't extrapolate it to every like it's never I feel like a lot of times people will make discoveries and then try to make claims that oh they discovered the next greatest like the answer to everything, like they'll be like oh the gut microbiome is the answer to all of the questions that we've ever
Oh,
won, but
yeah.
it's not, just like mirror neurons aren't either.
Right.
They're important and it is important.
And they're important discoveries, but they're not like a
The
panacea to
solution,
science.
yes, yes. So I think that's important anytime with any discovery, but we're talking about the gut microbiome. So just with the gut microbiome to realize that like anything, it has limits. There's
Right.
always
Like, if
limits.
you
Limits are
fix your gut
important to understand.
microbiome. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was just saying limits are important to understand.
Yeah. And, like, with your like, fixing your gut microbiome isn't going to fix all the problems in your life. Or it's not even going to fix all
No.
the problems with your health. You know? Like, that's
No,
not the
yeah.
only aspect to health.
Yeah, exactly. Cuz like with diabetes, you can't just especially type 1, like you can't just switch up your diet and then like your type 1 diabetes will go away. So
Right.
like you like there are some, even if in theory the gut microbiome might have affected diabetes in the beginning, that I don't know, but
Yeah.
fixing like yeah, it's not a cure all, I guess I would say.
Right.
Nothing really
Exactly.
is a cure all,
And,
unfortunately.
yeah. And I guess something analogous for what I was saying before about it being cyclical, like, I would say it's similar to, like, so, okay, I have ADHD and diabetes, which is a nightmare, but like, so the ADHD symptoms can make my diabetes worse because whether it's forgetfulness or executive dysfunction or whatever trait is making me less able to take care of my diabetes gets worse, and then that in turn also makes my ADHD get worse. Just so that you can kind of see something similar that's also cyclical if the initial explanation didn't make sense.
No, I think I see what you're saying and that makes sense. Yeah, I don't think I guess I don't know if
Yeah,
I'd ever heard
yeah.
that before or if maybe I'd heard, I don't know. It makes sense. I get what you're saying though.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to start with high sugar intake. So unbalances the high sugar intake unbalances the gut microbiome, and that leads to fewer gut immune cells that help protect against metabolic disorders.
And then we're gonna briefly mention fiber here because we all know fiber is important. So, why is fiber important? Well, the healthy bacteria in our guts feed off fiber, so getting the recommended amount of fiber intake helps maintain a healthy gut microbiome. And fiber has also been shown to increase gut microbiome diversity.
Yeah. And what about probiotics? Most of us have probably heard of probiotics by now. It seems to be a new trend. But you definitely want to fix your diet before trying pro or prebiotics. This is what the researchers recommend, at least.
Have you tried probiotics?
No, I have probiotics, but I have not tried them yet.
Okay. I've wanted to try it, or I guess I have. Like I've bought in some before, but again, to me, it's just such a weird. Like I know they're the good bacteria, but still, it's still like you're eating bacteria or like
They're little
swallowing
creepy
bacteria,
crawlies.
you know? Yeah, it's just such a weird. It's a weird concept. It's hard for like. I think to me, it just comes down to more of thinking about it than actually doing. Like I feel like if I didn't think about it and took them, I'd be fine. But it's the fact that I sit there and think about what I'm intaking that makes me feel sick, even though I know it shouldn't make me sick in theory, as long as you buy from like a trusted vendor or whatever. But it's still just a thought, I think, for me that makes it a little off. But I've heard that they can be really, and there's all like different kinds too, which is also really interesting. Like there's different kinds that can
Yeah,
be helpful for mood or helpful for whatever else is
for
out
weight
there.
loss or
Yeah, there's a bunch of different microbes that can affect those things. So it's interesting, and it's a field that I think they're still learning a lot about, obviously too. But then here I also just kind of wanted to go. So I have this is a article from Harvard. It's called Gut Feelings: How Food Affects Your Mood, and I just wanted to go over down here their suggestions for a healthier gut and improved mood. So, they recommend eating whole foods and avoiding packaged or processed foods, which are high in unwanted food additives and preservatives that disrupt the healthy bacteria in the gut. Instead of vegetable or fruit juice, consider increasing your intake of fresh fruits and vegetables. Frozen fruits without added sugars or additives are a good choice too. Eat enough fiber and include whole grains and legumes. How do you
legumes, I think.
Yeah, we'll go with that. In your diet, include probiotic rich foods such as plain yogurt without added sugars. To reduce sugar intake at breakfast, add cinnamon to plain yogurt with berries or to oatmeal or chai pudding. Adding fermented foods such as kefir, unsweetened, sauerkraut, or kimchi can be helpful to maintaining a healthy gut. Eat a balance of seafoods and lean poultry and less red meat each week. And add a range of colorful, fresh fruits and vegetables to your diet. And consider choosing certain organic produce, I guess. So, those are just some different ways that we could try to change our diet to lead to a healthier gut.
Yes. And the the additives in ultra processed foods affect our gut microbiome. The Western diet does not appear to be good for our gut microbiome, which leads to disease. Fast food culture and frozen meals, while sometimes they taste really good, and they're unfortunately something that some people are just unable to avoid, whether that's due to time or money or both. These things negatively impact our gut microbiome, leading to negative health effects. One thing we need to work on in our society as a whole is to get rid of those as the norm, which is not easy and is a multifaceted problem, which includes the capitalist way of life. I mean, I'm not completely anti-capitalist, but I'm just pro helping people and anti-suffering of people in the name of profit. So I guess you can call that whatever you want. But I mean, I personally think, like we should just have food banks that are just full of healthy options, like produce and like fresh, meat or whatever, like fresh foods, not just like prepackaged mac and cheese at the food bank. I mean, it's great that there are food banks because people do need them, but we need food banks that have healthier foods in them for sure.
Yeah,
Because
I would agree with that.
it's really hard to find that kind of thing. And I think there are some food banks that do have produce and stuff like that, but like they're really hard to come by. And like,
And I think
and,
it
yeah,
probably comes down to what they get donated to, which is
yeah,
unfortunate. And I think it also another aspect of it comes down to the fact that produce in general doesn't last very long, like stay
yeah,
good very long. But we need to come up with a solution for that, like
yeah.
we can't just be like, well, this, we can't do it because produce doesn't last very well. Okay, then
I mean, we
let's
ship produce online like all the time.
yeah,
So,
let's
I mean, there's
genetically
like
modify
refrigerated
produce some
trucks and
more.
stuff like that. Yeah,
I mean, I know some people are against genetically modified crops, but there's nothing wrong with them. We can talk about those
right.
in an episode
Oh,
sometime, but
the
there's
only
nothing
thing
inherently wrong with genetically modified crops.
I like genetically modified, like the insulin I take every day is genetically modified. So when I hear people say that GMOs are all bad, like I just have to roll my eyes every time.
Yeah, and honestly, some people may disagree with this, but I think organic food is a scam, and they're
It
just
is all food is
calling it
organic.
organic to get more money out of you.
The organic just means carbon based. Like pretty much all food is carbon based. McDonald's is
Yeah,
carbon based. McDonald's is organic technically. Like it's just a label they put on food to make it more expensive.
and organic food, the production and farming techniques needed for organic food is so much worse for the environment too. Because with these genetically modified techniques, they've been able to produce more with less. But if we go back to the organic way of making food, then it takes more like industrialization. Like there's more farming plots. I think it's basically that needs to do more bad, like more stuff that is harmful to the environment. Is what
Right.
I
Needs
don't know
more
the
water,
exacts of it, but
needs yeah,
yeah, all in
takes
the
up more
name of
space.
organic.
Right. Just
Oh,
so that we
organic.
don't genetically modify it because people are afraid of the future sometimes.
Yeah, and there's just like conspiracies about it too that like they're
Yeah.
doing this to hurt us or something. And I'm like,
Monsanto.
I feel like if they, if they were actually doing this to hurt us, then they would find a way to infiltrate the organic food too and make it just as bad. Like why I don't know why
See
people
the
think
food
organic food is automatically safe from the government intervention.
right.
Like if the government controls the GMO, why wouldn't it control organic too? Like
Right. They
you
would
think there's
control all
some
of it.
yeah, exactly. Like do they think there's some secret organic warriors, saviors who are
There's like a
protecting the
force
government?
field. There's a force
Yeah.
field. That's part of the organic trademark. There's a force field around the fields and the government can't get in.
Oh, and I think their biggest thing is that they claim that all the organizations and institutions are pushing fake news that GMOs are healthy so that we eat them and die,
Right.
and
Which
that
the food
organic is
that's
here
going
to
to kill
save
you,
us.
it's
But
going to be the food that's high in sugar and fat, like it's
regardless of if it's genetically modified, yes, it'll be the high
right.
in fat and sugar, yes.
Exactly.
It's just
So,
very interesting whenever people
yeah.
bring up GMOs. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say I fell for it at one time too in my past. I'm not gonna claim that I've never I guess falling for it. Like I didn't fall for it to where I made it my whole life, but I definitely at one point thought it was better. But after looking into it, I realized that it's not any better. It's not necessarily worse. It's worse for the environment, but it's not worse for us, but it's not better for us either. Like these genetically
It's
modified foods
neutral.
are not worse for us than an organic product.
Right, it's neutral. It depends on the food itself, not whether or not it's
Yes.
genetically modified.
Yes,
Back to
exactly.
the microbiome here. We have
You know,
a
that
if that's
I
okay.
wonder how the microbiomes feel about organic, and we'll have to ask them sometime.
Yeah,
Ask our little friends who help keep us alive.
well, do some telepathy.
Yeah. But obviously, as we've talked about, and there's a lot more too with diet, but what we briefly have discussed here, we can just see that food plays a very important role in the health of our gut microbiome, which also plays a role in the health of us too.
Yes. All right. So, what is the gut microbiome? Well, it's made up of trillions of microorganisms, which include bacteria, fungi, parasites, and viruses. We typically have a symbiotic relationship with them, and they affect all parts of the bodies and how our bodies function.
Next, we went over what the gut brain relationship is and how it affects us. So, as we mentioned, the gut and brain are highly interconnected via different mechanisms, whether that's including the vagus nerve or neurotransmitters, metabolites of the microorganisms, whatever it is. And there has been research into how these different mechanisms interact and what their interactions can do or lead to. So there is still research that has to be done before any conclusions can be drawn, but it'll be interesting to see what further research uncovers.
So, as far as the gut microbiome and our diet goes, having a healthy diet is essential to establishing a healthy gut microbiome. At the same time, our gut microbiome also determines what foods we eat, and this makes it a somewhat cyclical relationship. But that doesn't mean you can't change your gut microbiome. You absolutely can by living a healthy lifestyle.
And that was our videos on the gut microbiome. So make sure to join us tomorrow where we mess around a little bit with HTML and VS Code. And don't forget to leave a comment below letting us know what you want us to talk about in future episodes.
You can reach out to us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And we also occasionally do Twitch live streams, so watch out for those.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow and turn on notifications so you are notified when our new content comes out. Otherwise, we will see everyone next time.